this is Angela from the website naturallivingalchemy.ca. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to share with you a diffusive ginger syrup recipe that you can use in cases of congestion or sore throat if you find yourself experiencing an acute illness. I would even go so far as to try this out if you are having a bout of allergies right now, because we are coming into that time of the year. Now, when you would want to use this particular syrup is if you are experiencing a dry, cold type cough, okay? And that would be one that isn't really producing much phlegm, and what it is producing would be more thin and soft and more mucousy in texture. So if you are noticing the opposite, that is instead you're kind of coughing and it's green or yellow, it's hard, that is going to tell you that you have heat in your system or in your lungs, and that this recipe and this syrup is not for you. All right. But if you're noticing that more of that cold type, right, that thin mucus that's being expelled, this is maybe going to be your best friend. Now, before we get any further, I need you to know one thing. I am not a doctor. None of what is on this channel is considered medical advice. It is here simply for education and entertainment purposes only. Always be sure to consult your healthcare practitioner and professionals before following any of my advice. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way for the channel that we are on, let's keep going. So another way that you can tell if you have heat or cold in your body is going to be your tongue. I need you to look at your tongue, specifically after you've brushed your teeth, but before you've had your coffee, if you're a coffee drinker. Because sometimes drinking that morning cup of coffee can stain the tongue, and it's going to give you an inaccurate reading. But same thing, look at your tongue. Are you noticing that there's like a white coating on it? That's going to tell you there's cold. If you notice on the sides of your tongue, there's some scalloping, like you can see the indents from your teeth, that's going to tell you there's dampness in your system. If you look on your tongue and you notice that maybe it's more red, maybe you notice that there's spots almost missing, okay? If you haven't, if you know, okay? That is also showing you there's heat in your system. But right now, we are just wanting to go for the cold type cough, the cold type illnesses that can happen in our respiratory system. And this is going to help out with all of that. Our first ingredient that I would like to talk to you about today is ginger. All right. So let's go over the primary actions of concern. And what that means, if you haven't been or watched one of my videos, what that's telling you is basically we're going to go over not every action that ginger or any of these herbs can actually do within the body. We're really only going to be talking about the ones that are going to be affecting our system for using this as a cough syrup. Okay, so taste of ginger, she's pungent. Now, the actions that ginger can do in your body, we have a couple different that we're interested in. She works as a spasmolytic, reducing spasm in your musculature. Now, think your skeletal muscles and your smooth muscles. Your smooth muscles are going for organs, right? So that is going to be what we want to address with this syrup. So ginger is going to help support the body when it is feeling dull and achy. And, have you had that like non-specific type of pain where like, I'm kind of having that in my arm right now. It's dull, it's achy. I can't quite pinpoint where it is in my arm that hurts, if that makes sense, as opposed to that sharp pain that like I used to have a lot of problems with carpal tunnel. When it was flaring up, you knew that was a sharp pain that was almost debilitating. Okay, but whereas ginger is going to help you with more of like that dull, non-specific type pain that is generally alleviated with the application of heat, whether that be through the bath or just even a hot water bottle or even a shower. Another action that we're concerned about with ginger is she works as an expectorant, removing that phlegm from your body and helping to increase localized circulation, thinning out that mucus, and making it easier for you to therefore expel. So sometimes you'll also notice, we're going to talk about coughs again for a second, that your cough will change within the course of your illness. Sometimes it's going to be more hot. Sometimes it's going to be more cold. So it's not a bad idea to have something that's going to at least address the cold types of your cough, and then take something else if you notice you having more heat within your system, within your illness. I really hope that makes sense. Okay, let's keep going. So, some other actions that we're concerned with, ginger works as a diaphoretic. That's going to cause us to sweat and helping in cases of fever. So, we're not wanting to shut down that fever response of the body. Nope, that is there for a reason. Guys, I'm going to get on a little soapbox here and then we'll get back to our scheduled program. We really need to hmm, stop thinking that we know more than the vital response of our body. We need to stop thinking that we actually know best when these signals that are coming from our body, be it inflammation, be it fever, they're telling us, our symptoms are telling us something. They're not there just for you to decide, oh, that needs to go. No, honey, it is there because it is wanting to tell you something, because something is not right in your system. And those symptoms are just ways of telling you to know what is going wrong. Okay. So finally, we're going to talk about our next action, and that is a circulatory stimulant. And you can tell that because she has a diaphoretic action. But basically, the circulatory stimulant, she's going to move your heat from your core, which is warmer, out into the periphery. And then it's going kind of warming up, cold hands, cold feet. That's going to warm you up. But then what it's going to do is take the cold hands, cold feet, cold periphery, and we're just going to circulate that into the core. So it's kind of just going from the inner to the outer and back from the outer to the inner, and just recycling our blood and our fluids in that way, just warming up the body. And that is going to be helping with that fever that I just talked about that you might have. So, what that does in the body is it supports the elimination of invading pathogens and those metabolic byproducts that can become stagnant in our interstitial fluids, our lymph, and our blood. And finally, the last action that I do want to mention is she is microbial and antibacterial. And we can tell that by the high volatile or essential oil content within the plant. The affinities that we are concerned about, where ginger likes to go in your body, is your respiratory system. Now, energetically, she's really interesting. It depends on if you have dry or fresh ginger. Now, this recipe we're using today does call for fresh ginger. Now, fresh ginger is warming, but it is also considered to have more of a stronger therapeutic value. Now, dried ginger is she's just hot. It's hot and it is just drying overall. Now, sometimes that is what you want it to do within the system. But today we're not. I don't want to dry up something that's already dry, you know? So, like I said, we're just going to use a fresh ginger. And so you'll notice also that it is drying because it is getting those secretions going. It is moving that blood. All right. It is potentially causing sweating. All of those things that are helping the expel different things from the body will have an overall drying effect. And lastly, ginger is relaxing. And that is why she is in our syrup today. Now, some contraindications as to when you would not want to use ginger. In large doses, it has something called an emmenagogue effect, which means that it actually can stimulate menses. So you're going to want to avoid it if you're pregnant. Okay. And you're going to also want to avoid ginger if you are having something like peptic ulcers or if you're having a surgery about a week away. All right. So, like, if you know you have a surgery coming up like next month, that's fine. Continue to take your ginger, but stop about 1 week before surgery. And that's because ginger has some blood thinning effects and could increase your risk of hemorrhaging. The ruling planet of ginger is the sun, and the ruling element is the earth. The next ingredient that I want to talk about is cinnamon. Now, cinnamon's taste is sweet and spicy. All right. Its action is she works as an inflammation modulator, just going in and just fine tuning that inflammation response, not turning it off. Nope. Just kind of making it a little bit more comfortable. Okay. Some other things that cinnamon does is it works as an antimicrobial, and this is also because of its essential oil content. It works as an expectorant, clearing mucus from the lungs and encouraging circulation throughout the respiratory system. And lastly, our action of being a diaphoretic. And again, that is just encouraging sweating and thereby decreasing the length of a fever. She has an affinity for the respiratory system and the circulatory system. Energetically, she is warming and she is stimulating. Some contraindications about when you wouldn't want to use cinnamon would be if you are experiencing like a liver condition. And I would just advise you to be cautious if you are pregnant. Cinnamon might not be the best herb for you. The ruling planet of cinnamon is the sun, and the ruling element is fire. Now, you got some sun plants here, right? So, what those are going to do, just very, very briefly, is the solar plants actually help build up your vitality within your system. Your vitality probably isn't going to be super high if you found yourself coming down just with a sickness, right? It happens to everybody, no big deal. But by adding some of these solar plants into our body, that's just going to build up that vital force and just help us get past it faster. Now, just a little bit more information. If you're curious about the ruling planet and the ruling element and what all of that means, I'm going to send you to a video I did on the Western alchemical map of creation that just explains how everybody, everything has the same elements, has the same planets, and all of that within our systems, just in varying degrees. Our next plant ally that's going to be in this diffusive ginger syrup is mullein. Now, mullein has a couple different tastes that we are concerned about today for this recipe. She's salty, and that's indicating a high amount of minerals. She's also sweet, and that's telling us that she contains mucilage, and that's going to help build up your tissues, strengthen your constitution overall. Mullein is also mildly astringent and slightly bitter. The actions that we are concerned about is she works as a relaxant expectorant, as it is spasmolytic in nature and therefore can relieve tension and spasm by just relaxing those smooth muscles around your lungs, surrounding your respiratory system, and just opening up those airways. She also works as a demulcent, soothing and cooling that and moistening your dried out tissues in the mucosal membranes. Mullein is an inflammation modulating plant and also works as a relaxant nervine, helping just to really relieve overly irritated nerves that can cause by an overly irritated cough. Okay. And lastly, mullein has anodyne properties, and that's going to be helping with any nerve pain that might be present within this illness. Affinities, mullein likes to go through your respiratory system, your musculoskeletal system, your lymphatic system, and your nervous system. Energetically, she's cooling and moistening and has an astringent effect on the tissues. Now, just think for a moment, why would we want an astringent at this point? Well, runny nose. A runny nose is a really, really good example of loose tissues, okay? Fluids leaking out. So, mullein is just going to help maybe stop that nose from running so much by just tightening up all those tissues within your respiratory system. Contraindications for this plant are none that I could find. All right. Our ruling planet is Saturn, and the ruling element is the air. And finally, we are going to be using some lobelia in this recipe as well. So lobelia has a taste that is pungent and acrid. Now, acrid, if you're not familiar with what that taste is, okay, so the easiest way that I have had it described to me is When you're sick and you've been throwing up, or even just a really bad heartburn, I've experienced this too. And you can just kind of have that taste in the back of your throat, that bile, that's an acrid flavor. All right. So lobelia does have that. And what those flavors are going to do and the actions in your body it's going to produce is relaxing. It has an affinity for the nervous system and the musculoskeletal system. Lobelia works as an expectorant, relaxing the smooth muscles around your bronchioles and opening up those airways during constrictive cases of coughing and just inflammation due to illness. Lobelia is also a nervine relaxant, helping to relax your entire nervous system. And finally, lobelia works as a spasmolytic, treating muscular spasm in the body. And it is actually said to be the most reliable spasmolytic that we have here in our Western Bacteria Medica. Basically, the plants in the West we have available to us. This is the one that is going to be the most reliable for just releasing the spasm within the body. Lobelia has affinities for your musculoskeletal system, the nervous system. By relaxing the muscles, is how that action works. Also has an affinity for the respiratory system and specifically the lungs and the bronchial tree, which is why I've included it today. And lastly, lobelia has an affinity for your cardiovascular system by increasing circulation and opening up your pores. And the opening up of the pores is going to help your body just release more through the pores of your skin. We got to get that out of us. And that's one way our body intelligently does so. Energetically, lobelia is heating, but also cooling over the long term because it can increase your perspiration. It is a relaxant and it is also moistening and it is thereby beneficial for a dry, spasmodic cough. Now, some contraindications of lobelia. It is considered to be a low dose herb. And there's a little bit of controversy surrounding this herb depending on where you live in the world. Now, if you find yourself in a place where you can't get it, or it's actually illegal, as it is in some countries, from my understanding, you can just skip this within the formulation. It is a nice plant ally to add, but it is not the main star of the show. And lastly, it has been shown to interfere with lithium type drugs. So I would ask you to avoid it if you are taking those. The ruling planet of lobelia is Mercury, and the ruling element is the air. Those were our ingredients that are going to go in our diffusive ginger syrup today. Now, let's just see how easily this all comes together. Now, I would like to not forget to ask you to check out that description box below. And in there, you're going to find a couple different things. You're going to find a link to the full written blog article that accompanies this video that has a recipe card in there. You're also going to find links so that you can get some of these items for yourself and just make this syrup for yourself or somebody in your family. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is you're going to take your ginger and I'm going to ask you to wash it. Now, not a paid promotion or advertisement. This is just the plant or the fruit and vegetable wash that I like to use. So you're just going to want to make sure that you clean this up really well because we're not going to be peeling it. All right. So then you're going to take something like a mandolin. Now, if you wanted to just trim or cut this by hand, you definitely can. I just find that it's a little bit easier doing this. Now, the thickness that I like to pick is mine. You can kind of choose 4 different thickness levels. I like the thinnest. Okay. Now, one thing that is interesting about ginger that I've noticed when I've been making just different ginger teas for myself, the the size that you are going to have your ginger is going to actually, how can I explain this? So when I make a ginger tea, I grate it up. It is spicier that way than if I just made a tea out of like just these little chopped up pieces. Okay. So the smaller the piece, the spicier that it is basically what I'm trying to say. So you are going to take your ginger. I have 2 cups of ginger here. And in that, I'm going to add it to a pot with 4 cups of water. Now I am doubling this recipe, so you can make it in half. It is super easy, but I'm just going to share exactly what I'm using. Okay. So you're just going to want to put your ginger in your water, and then we're going to throw this on the stove. But before we do, I want you to add some cinnamon. Now, I just have these short sticks. So if you had longer ones, I would just use two. I have these short ones. I'm going to use four. So we're going to throw those two things in the pot. We're going to bring this over to the stove. We're going to bring it to a boil. We're going to reduce it to a simmer, and we're going to allow it to reduce by about half. Okay. And then after that is when we're going to be adding our plant allies. But don't worry, I will walk you through that process when we get there.
All right, you can see that we're boiling. We're just going to reduce it down to a simmer, and we are going to let this liquid reduce by half.
Now that our liquid has reduced by about half, we are going to strain it. So you're going to need to get yourself, I like to use this larger measuring cup with just a small strainer over top. Now, the lid to my pot does actually strain. So I will just use this, but you're going to need to strain the ginger and then cinnamon out of your liquid. So I like to just use this other little strainer so that it catches all of the debris. But if you could smell this, this smells amazing. All right, so we have 2 cups left, just a little over 2 cups. So I'm just going to move that out of the way. Now what you're going to do is we are going to take these other herbs, the mullein and the lobelia, and we're actually going to infuse this mixture. All right. So the measurements that we're going to need to do, so it is 1 tablespoon of mullein per 1 cup. So we have 2 cups, and I'm just going to do 2 tablespoons here. And we are going to just grind this up in our herb grinder. Now, the reason you would want to do this, I know these pieces aren't very big, but if you can grind them up a little bit smaller, you're just going to help break that cell wall down, and you're going to help extract more of those key constituents that we really, really want in this infusion. So I have this larger strainer. Truth be told, it actually came out of a kettle that I just kind of took apart. This was attached to, it came with 2 lids. This was just attached to the second lid, but this is going to work perfectly in this infusion. So I have my couple of tablespoons in here. Perfect. And we'll just pour that in here. And because they are getting infused together, I'm not too worried about leaving a little bit of extra bits in there. Now, for our lobelia, we are going to be using half of a teaspoon per 1 cup of water. So, all right. Perfect. So we aren't wanting to necessarily look for a powder form of these herbs, but we are just wanting to just grind them up so that they're a little bit smaller. So next, we'll just put our lid on our other infuser, and you're just going to put it in your liquid and let that infuse for 10 minutes. It's been 10 minutes, and I'm actually not quite sure if I did remember to tell you the amount of time that it took to simmer to reduce down to half was 45 minutes. Okay, just for an idea for when you're making this for yourself. So now that it's been 10 minutes, we are going to take our herbs out. And then you're just going to throw these in your recycle bin, same as your ginger slices and your cinnamon sticks. Those can just all get thrown in the compost bin as well. So next, what we're going to add, and you can see actually, our infusion is a little bit darker, our syrup, than it was when we originally, before we put these herbs in. So next, you're going to want to add some honey. Now, the amount you want to add, it calls for 1/2 cup of raw local honey. All right. I don't like mine that sweet. So we're just going to do 1/2 cup. And you want to just make sure that it has cooled down. I find that those 10 minutes that it's needing to steep for is enough time for everything to cool down nicely. And then you're just going to stir this all together until your honey is nicely combined. Okay, so now I like to just kind of check the bottom just to make sure that we are all nicely incorporated. Okay, so once you are all nicely and incorporated together, it is time to just throw it in a jar. So I like to use these. It was actually a ketchup or a barbecue sauce that I like to use. So I just like to repurpose my jars whenever I can, and I find these are really good for your syrups. So you're just going to carefully pour this in. Now, this is going to stay in the refrigerator and you're going to want to use it within 1 to 2 months. Now, the honey does act as a preservative, actually. And there you go. There is our diffusive ginger syrup. So, a couple more things. You're going to want to make sure that you label your bottles. You're going to want to put what it is and as well as the date. Now, the dosage for this syrup is going to be 1 to 2 tablespoons up to 3 times a day. All right. Just for the while you're feeling all of that congestion, or at least while you still notice that you have that coldness in your respiratory system and with that dry cough. All right. Again, just use her into 1 to 2 months and you are good to go. Okay. I would like for you to comment down below and let me know what types of things do you like to do to support yourself when you're feeling under the weather. And if you wouldn't mind, hit the like button on this video and maybe share it with anybody who you would feel might benefit or enjoy learning how to make their own syrups. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel so you don't miss future videos and we can spend more time together. But I just really want to thank you for spending this time with me today, and may you find peace wherever you are.